policy committee and ask for approval. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, carries. Item 3 is vote on the approval of the minutes. Second, another second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. Item 4 is the consent and vote on the main financial statements that you want to.
Yeah, I mean, the finance committee reviewed the financial statements. We're continuing to tweak the process, make sure we have proper structure in place, and we're providing all the right information for this group and for the executive group to review and have the full complement of information. And so, we've added things like all the expenditure, credit card charges, and making sure we have the proper descriptions on that, so everybody has a good sense for how the money is being spent. So we're continuing to tweak it, but I think it's getting better. And exec reviewed it, approved it, so it's recommended. Yeah, we changed the top at the finance committee to not have that committee approve it. To approve the financial statement, but more to receive and file it. But then again, ensure we provide the right structure and the right information for those statements so that it's proven and the executive can approve it. Thank you.
So we did approve it to executive.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
That does not need a motion second according to my parliamentarian. So any further discussion on this?
Move approval. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. I assume that one vote, and those are still 8 aye votes, is that correct, or was there no vote that wanted to be recorded? Okay, so I'll believe that is unanimous vote. Item 5 is the consent and vote on a contract.
Thank you. We just had one item for you this month, and that's the bill from the legal counsel. This is related to some different matters related to personnel issues we've gone through recently. One bills, handbook and policy procedure review, and just normal, the normal duties as legal counsel for the MPO. So with that, this was also discussed by executive committee last week. Recommended for approval, and we also recommend this group approval.
All right. Any questions for Della? Your motion. Motion by Hannah, second by Mosley. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. Item 6 is the presentation on the transportation innovative.
Yes. Thank you. On the line today is Jill Stark. She is a research and technology partnership program manager with Federal Highway Administration. She is here to talk about innovative financing options available for transportation projects. Jill.
Well, we do that since we only have 3% now.
So she's not on the line.
I do not see her on the line unless there's an unknown phone number on here, but I don't see anybody named Jill.
Okay.
That's mine. It's Heather Stansel.
What was that?
Okay.
Thank you.
So we will, if we see her come on later, we can always do that later.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Andy.
Wait, she's here.
Okay,
Just here.
Andrew, do you want to hand it off?
Oh, sorry. Jill, are you there?
Hi.
Hi. The floor is yours for your presentation.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm right on time then. Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Jill Stark, and I'm actually with Turner Fairbanks Highway Research Center with Federal Highway, but I've worked a lot with Pete Menkoskis, who's been doing innovative finance support longer than I've even known about it. So, he was gracious enough to, to tell me that I could go ahead and try to fill his shoes, good luck to me, but I'm so glad to be with you all today. And thanks for letting me present. So we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today, and I realize you've got a lot of things going right now. So at any time you can reach out to me afterwards or, another day, and we can provide more materials. But I'm going to talk today about some innovative finance techniques, the Innovative Finance for Planners briefing book, and then some other resources we have available. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so what is innovative finance? Transportation agencies really traditionally have used the grant-based funding from the federal government and then matched with their own funds to pay for transportation investments. However, today, agencies are really trying to increase and expand the types of funding sources that they use. So innovative finance allows transportation agencies to deliver these transportation projects in creative ways through financing and other non-traditional funding options. By using innovative finance, transportation agencies may be able to expand their program's reach and increase their buying power. So we have a lot of this in our briefing book, and I've got those resources at the end of the presentation, so you can go delve more into that. Okay, next slide, please. All right, I really like infographics. So, this one highlights the benefits of innovative finance versus the more traditional kind of pay as you go. So if you look at, say that you have a project and it's just been sitting in that long range transportation plan or MTP for, it keeps getting bumped to the outer years. With pay as you go, you might wait 5 years to start building. And that's saying that it is going to be in your tip. But if you're waiting 5 years to start building due to budget restrictions, you could actually start building that immediately with the innovative finance. You can build without delays instead of having to phase out your projects. And then you can also incur an interest at approximately 3.25% over 10 years. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about because you are using your inflation rise. You're seeing that rate rise at about 4% annually with the construction cost. So that 4%, I went back and asked some of our senior leadership, how accurate is that still? And we've been really measuring this for the last 30 years. That's actually about right. It's about right, it's about 4%. You're going to have kind of increases and slight decreases, but it's usually all around 4%. And then you can have your project complete in 3 to 5 years as opposed to 8 to 10 years. And then add that 4% onto the 10 years as opposed to the 3.25% over 5. Okay, next slide, please. All right, this is when I'm talking about increasing your planning dollars. When you're looking at financing, you're borrowing funds, your bonds, your loans, your public-private partnerships. You have this funding, the supplemental revenue raised. Value capture, that is innovative funding. So you might think of a sales use tax, or we have like a whole series of those too. Like you might have a special assessment district, that kind of thing. Oftentimes, innovative finance techniques include these elements of both financing and funding. So what we like to do is provide all the techniques and provide some examples of, states, local governments, tribal governments that have used a different mixture, and so that you can come up with your own kind of creative ways. But we try to put all the techniques and make those available to everybody. Okay, next slide, please. So here we have some examples, and Garvey in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Garvey and SIB, which is a state infrastructure bank financing in Missouri DOT. We have TIFIA Rural Project Initiatives in San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority. We've got tolling and pricing, value capture. Those are those innovative funding instead of finance. So finance, think loans. Innovative funding, think gathering money up front or as the project's being built by, say, businesses that are investing in the area. And then we have the CMCG method, which is construction manager, general contractor. Pawnee Nation has a really great example of that. So all of these links have really in-depth information. And I'm telling you, their website, as opposed to even my own office's website, it is really, really dense with case studies. You could get lost in there for days. So it is a little bit overwhelming, but there's a lot of great information. Plus, I'm also going to post in the chat after I present the link to their YouTube site. So they have all of these examples. So there is like a 12-minute TIFIA video and an 18-minute Garvey video. And that really gives you a significant overview of the process. It gets a little more into the detail. So I will post those specific links so that you'll have access to them. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so why should innovative finance be considered in the planning process? And as a 20-year planner, I've worked with a lot of MPOs across the nation, a lot of state DOTs, and a lot of municipalities and tribal governments. And so we all have the same common problem where we have what we see as this fixed budget, and then we apply the 4% rate of increase every year. And then it's a scramble to try to select projects and do the project selection based on our projected funding for 4 years, let alone when we're doing our long range planning. So leveraging existing funding, you're ensuring available funds are put to their best use. So you really can expand that long range plan. If you have something to where you would have a USDA rural loan, and that is a fixed rate for the life of the loan. You said, okay, we're going to do that. We will have this money either by some, you might have a use tax that you have in place. You might have a sales tax you have in place. You might just have, this might get you over the hump until you get maybe some state and federal funds coming your way because you just paid for a major project. So then you expedite the project delivery, and this increased efficiency, it increases in efficiency and keeps costs down. And I think we kind of showed that before in the infographic, when you're seeing that if you have 10 years assigned for a project at 4% inflation rate, and that costs a lot more than a 5-year project at 3.25% interest. So that cuts down the time. Plus, it also cuts down on, maybe other road wear and tear when you're having to divert traffic off for, many, many years. Increase stakeholder and public awareness. So providing information early in the planning process. And this is something that everybody in this room knows. You do the public involvement early and often. And it's always a loop. So you start with public involvement, you continue with public involvement, you end with public involvement. That also gains the buy-in from the public. So there are no surprises throughout. They know what to expect, and they're excited about the project. They see the potential, they see what it's going to be, and they see how it's going to benefit them. And then you're encouraging innovation, formalizing a more innovative culture. And I think we're all in that period too, where there's so many great things out there. There's so many, we've got the Everyday Counts initiatives with like the high performing concrete. We're also looking at the, street lights for nighttime lighting, and how different lighting systems can actually really enhance the experience, and it can cut down on a lot of the crashes and fatalities that are done with nighttime driving. So we're all looking at innovations, and there are innovations that you're looking for in your areas. And this is just saying, that you're that much more invested in the future. So with our next slide, please. Okay, so how does innovative finance fit into the transportation planning process? So at the MPO and RTPO, which Metropolitan and Rural Transportation Planning organizations, it all starts with your long-range planning, your MTPs. Tribal governments have their own LRTP. State DOTs have their STIP. Now, they may have a capital improvement plan. They may have something that's long range. They are not required to. However, MPOs are TPOs, and tribal governments are required. And so then from there, you take your 20-year list of projects, and you really financially constrain those down into your 4-year TIP. So 4-year or 5-year, depending on air quality. So that is, now those are committed projects, and it's going to take an amendment to either take that out or put something else in. And then we have even down further, which is our Unified Planning Work Program. Those are our 1-year budgets, or the SP&R work program. State DOT also has their work program. So it really starts, I think innovative finance really starts at the long-range planning, and then even more thoroughly identified in those financial plans in the TIP and STIP. Next slide. Okay, the briefing book. This is something that, I worked on with Pete. I worked as a planner in the Federal Highway Division in North Carolina for 8 years, and then worked in the Office of Planning at headquarters for 10 years. And now I'm over in research, but planning's in my blood. So this is something that we worked very closely on, because we didn't want the financial information skipping the planners. And so we really tried to make this a great introduction to the different techniques with innovative finance. We also ensured that we created our case study examples in there are not just going to be, these large metropolises like Atlanta. We made sure that we did a geographical surveys to where we would, we'd have Midwestern and Western and Northern and Southern and Eastern examples. And then we also made sure that we had large and small MPO examples, as well as tribal government examples. So we're really trying to speak to, every different every different stakeholder, and then also every different size level. So we have a source of examples, that are incorporating innovative funding and financing techniques into the planning process, as this says, and then also helping new MPO transportation decision makers understand and utilize this in the planning process. So we're really just trying to speak to everybody that is a stakeholder in the planning process and really just make these techniques easy and identifiable. And then if something looks interesting, then that would be something for you to kind of use your creativity and see how that can work the best for you. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, our audience for the briefing book. We have the transportation planning community, and that's, everyone at this table here. We have decision makers, board members, planners, financial managers, anyone really thinking strategically about how best to program and utilize available funding opportunities. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to keep this brief because I can go into, greater depth on, on different areas. But I also want to be very respectful and mindful that you probably have a very full agenda. So I also don't want to take all of your time either. But the CIFS video series, those innovation profiles, and that Planners and Communities webpage. CIFS, I'm a Fed, I talk in acronyms, so Center for Innovative Finance Support. You'll have everything there, and that is, like I said, you're going to be chock full of case studies that you could read for days. I haven't read them all, and I've been working with this group for, I think, 6 years now. So anyway, and you know what? I never even turned on my camera, which it's probably not a bad thing. But anyway, can I ask, can I answer any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Questions for Joe? Right. Well, thank you for the information, and we appreciate it.
Wonderful, thank you. And then on the next slide, and I kind of forgot this, is Pete's contact information. So I'm going to post a couple of things in the chat box that, for additional information specifically, because I think you all are interested in TIFIA and Garvey. So I want to make sure and post that in there. And other than that, please I'll put my contact information. You can contact me as well if you have any other questions.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, item 7 is recorded vote on the Water Trails Line of Credit Agreement. Matt McKinney, I think are you online to present this?
Yes, sorry, Bob, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Well, today we got before us, and I know this has been on the agenda in the past. This relates to a line of credit between ICON and of course, obviously the MPO and Bankers Trust is a $15 million line of credit. It's frankly, as the slide here shows, to help cash flow the project as different portions of the project move forward. There are going to be occasions where we may not be able to receive the funding from the federal government because something hasn't been fully installed, for example, rock as it's installed throughout the process. And so there may be a lag in time for when we receive reimbursements from the federal government to the time when we actually need to make payments on other portions. So this line of credit is going to help cash flow that. We've worked with legal counsel. Scott Brennan is on the line here to ensure that the line of credit only attaches to the account that's held with Bankers Trust and no other accounts held by either organization. I'm trying to think, and throughout this process, I know Len Murray, and I apologize, I can't tell if Len is there, but Glenn had
Yep.
raised some good questions and some comments throughout the process. As a result of that, the folks with Icon were able to provide some responses to a number of the questions and address a lot of those items. So maybe I'll pause there. I don't know if Scott Brennan wants to weigh in at all, but hopefully that's a tee up, and I'm happy to address any additional questions from there.
Thanks, Matt. Scott, do you have anything further to add from your standpoint?
Only that I think you were all provided with the analysis, excuse me, that we did related to the line of credit. And Council McKinney is correct. We didn't think that based upon our review of the agreements, that they were problematic in any way. It is limited, the Bankers Trust interest is limited only to the project account, and MPO is the only entity that has access to that account. In addition, Bankers Trust has confirmed this limited view of access to the collateral via an email writing. And should we ever have a difficulty, that in my mind, that would be evidence that we would utilize. Hopefully we would never have a problem with it, but one never knows. But so that's just additional evidence. But so we don't view the line of credit agreements as problematic.
All right. I do, let's get a motion on the table.
Move to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second, motion second. I'll call for discussion now, then if you want to start.
Yeah, I just want to run through the same statement I read, the exact group is on the same sheet.
Okay.
I've done my due diligence, to bring our concern forward to staff and legal members of this committee. The original grant documents, agreements, and sub-agreements were written to protect all parties involved in the Water Trails project. Each of you will form your own opinion, but I still have concerns about the line of credit documents and the responses I received. While our attorney expressed his opinion on what constitutes collateral according to documents, the language he claims does not apply in this situation and was not removed from any line of credit documents. There was an excerpt from an email presented as coming from Bankers Trust legal staff. We do not know what question was posed, nor do we know the full extent of the response or who provided the response. Why didn't Bankers Trust attorney provide a formal written response to the MPO concerning collateral and power of attorney referred to in line of credit, or offered to remove the language in the documents that is deemed irrelevant to this line of credit? The two responses we received to my many questions were, in my opinion, unprofessional in form and provide incomplete, conflicting information. The email responses with statements in red font. I do not know who provided the responses. Was it Icon staff, the MPO, an attorney from Icon, Bankers Trust, or the MPO, or some combination of the aforementioned, as no name or signature is attached to the statements? The agenda item notes the need for the line of credit stems from a requirement by the Iowa Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration to guarantee enough funds are in hand to cover the bid estimate and ensure the project's completion. This conflicts with the red text inserted by someone stating the purpose of the line of credit is to address gaps in cash flow, not gaps in funding. This confusion in writing in the same packet confirms the ongoing concern that staff, legal, and this committee do not have one single line of facts or understanding of this project. This lack of detail and seriousness in responding to questions leaves me without confidence in our legal counsel and staff to advise this committee on a project with the potential to damage the MPO and our future grant opportunities. We did learn that the MPO cannot open another bank account with Bankers Trust for the life of the MPO's involvement in Water Trails project, as it appears it would be subject to the collateral provisions. The proposed changes to sub-agreement number 4 appear to address the current issues that funds can be documented and agreed to by all parties. Did legal counsel consult Polk County Conservation and the third-party beneficiaries mentioned in sub-agreement 4 consisting of Federal Highway Administration, the Iowa Department of Transportation, and the City of Des Moines concerning the proposed changes, and did they accept them? We've never been presented with confirmation of the exact dollars on hand, anticipated pledges, contingencies, and exact plans for any shortfall. Businesses and our member governments do not operate this way, but not make significant financial decisions without complete information. Icon still did not secure line of credit within the time frame required, and as I understand it, the process for pre-approval for a loan is not the same as a signed and secured line of credit. Reviewing the line of credit documents for Baker's Trust, nothing has changed, but written and amendment sub-agreement number 4. Additionally, Icon will provide proof that the line of credit will remain available to the MPO until the final audit is completed and the project is closed out or the earlier termination of sub-agreement number 2. The line of credit may be closed by Icon after final payment for the construction of the project is made by the MPO to its general contractor or the earlier termination of sub-agreement 2. The two statements could contradict each other as the final audit and project closing may not be the same date as after final payment is made to the general contractor. This loophole needs to be closed. The 5th paragraph in sub-agreement 4, whereas the current construction cost of the project is estimated to be $48 million, and Icon will secure all funds in excess of $32,550,000 in the grant funds. This leaves an estimated $15,450,000.
There's a water trails money. You know, we don't have.
Anyway. Thank you. To be secured by Icon for the MPO's portion of Bowman Water Trails project. Sub-agreement number 4, item 4, line of credit. Icon will obtain local funding and a line of credit that together totals an amount equal to 110% of the engineer's final estimate cost, less the federal and state funds secured. Wouldn't that now be $16,995,000 based on the 5th paragraph estimate of $48 million? I want to be clear, we support the Water Trails project, and I have an understanding of the commitments we have entered, and I recognize this project must succeed. However, I'm disappointed that we received responses from unnamed sources and continue to make major decisions based on informal, incomplete, and unsigned information from legal counsel, despite being asked on the record for a full and formal legal opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Motion in a second. I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Any abstentions? That motion carries. Item 8 is report and vote on the MPO bank account signature.
Thank you. As we were going through some of this bank information, I think Lynn actually brought it to our attention that the signatories that we had on for these bank accounts were not necessarily approved by the MPO, by the board, I should say. When the director left, we currently have a policy that says the director, assistant director, and planning manager can be signatories on those accounts. When the director left and we needed another signatory internally in staff, we had Andrew Collins as the principal planner, be added as a signatory. That was just to keep things moving so that we can get bogged down and not be able to pay bills and so forth. Now, just in full transparency and everything, we wanted to have board approval on that. We wanted to bring that back for you to ratify that decision, make sure that Andrew as well as that kind of continue to sign checks for all the MPO bank accounts. So the bank accounts associated with checks include the MPO's main checking account with First National Bank, as well as the Water Trails account, which we talked about. Associated to accounts associated with this. If there's any questions about that, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, I'm just asking you to ratify that we will continue to be the signatories on these accounts.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Second, any further discussion?
Just have a quick question. So Dylan, is the planning manager within the org chart, is that just one position then?
Yeah, the planning manager, yes. There's one.
So it's just one person that we're adding.
Correct. Principal planner. Planning manager is already on the principal planner who's Andrew. There's only one of them.
All right,
I have one thing. Is this considered temporary until the next executive director is appointed, whoever that may be?
I think that would be our recommendation. And then I should also mention that it's under the screen in the packet, but we have just that policy and then policies and procedures manual, that's still draft, that's working its way through the process. So again, just until that is also formally approved, I think that makes sense to make this temporary and we reassess once a permit director.
Can we motion be amended that this is a temporary or conditional upon the hire.
I'll amend my motion to include that this is temporary until a permanent director is in place and the handbook is completed.
Thank you. You made the second. Okay. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Both same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. Item 9 is report and vote on the MPO planning services agreement. So,
Thank you. One of the contracts that the MPO has is with an organization called CERPA, the Central Iowa Regional Transportation Planning Alliance. We've had this contract since the early 1990s. We started this. CERPA is essentially the MPO from the rural area outside of our MPO here in Central Iowa. We have had this agreement and we want to bring this back to you, try to bring this back to you every year to reaffirm that agreement. That's what the agreement calls for. The last time this agreement was really updated was back in 2019. And the only change then and the only change we're recommending now is just to update the name of the transportation zone that's referenced in that document still. For this iteration, we want to update the FAST Act to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Otherwise, the agreement will stay the same. It just says that we are the ones hired to do their planning for them for a fee. In the agenda packet, it talks about that, what that fee is. It's about $135,000 we receive in this fiscal year budget, or I should say the next fiscal year budget. So that's what this is about. If there's questions about that, I'm happy to address it. Otherwise, we're going to
Move to approve. Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. Item 10 is report and vote on fiscal year 24 investment policy. Shall
Thank you. Another kind of end of year item that we need to run through is the investment policy. This is just a policy that basically says what we can invest our funds in and safeguard what we have. So as I mentioned before, we have a checking account with First National Bank. We also have money market accounts with First National Bank, and then IPA account, which is public account for public entities. It's held to Wells Fargo. We discussed this with the finance subcommittee a couple of weeks ago, as well as the executive committee last week. They didn't recommend any changes to the agreement or to the investing policy we already had last year. So we'd ask you to reaffirm that policy and adopt that for the coming fiscal year as well. If there's any questions about that or anything that Ted or Lynn as members of the finance subcommittee want to add to that, please feel free to do so. I wasn't at that meeting, but I think
This committee was fine with it. They're all very safe investments that can only make money, they can't make money, so they were perfectly fine.
and just while I'm thinking about the IPA account has a much better interest rate currently than money market accounts. You have better rates than IPA account, not the money market.
How long is the money market calendars for? They're decent rates right now.
That's it. The rate is 20%. The IPA.
How long is the money market? How long do we have the money market? I mean, is this?
And Rhonda can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if there's a term to it, like a CD. It's just a savings.
Get started now.
Well, can we look at maybe doing it as a 12-month, I think we're paying probably 5% or something, 1.5%. And look into moving some money if we're not going to use it to put it in there and make a little bit of interest for us.
Right. Further discussion. This is a recommendation from the finance committee. It does not even need a motion for a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
You'll come back to us.
Yeah.
Let us know.
We'll work with the finance subcommittee and identify what makes sense.
All right, that carries. Item 11 is report and vote on the self-certification.
Okay, I think this is one of the final things, just end of year housekeeping things to do, and that is our self-certification. So self-certification basically says that we take a look at ourselves and ensure that we are doing what we're supposed to do per the federal regulations that we put on this. Every 4 years, we're certified by the USDOT. They come in and they evaluate us. We have meetings and they kind of run us through the ringer. But in those off years, they want us to self-certify. The self-certification goes, there's a statement that goes into the tip, and the tip will be approved here next month. But prior to that, going in the document, we want to make sure that you are all aware that that is in there and that we are compliant with what we say we're going to provide them. So you can see up there on that screen, there's 8 things, 8 different elements that we have to comply with through per the federal regulations. I won't read all of these off. Some of these are things that are more proactive that we have to do, such as the first one, we have to have what they call a 3C planning process, continuing, comprehensive, coordinated, or cooperative. So that's more active. It's telling us we have to go out and engage with everybody and do the work requirements we have to do. Where some of them are more things we don't want to violate. We don't want to violate the Clean Air Act. We don't want to violate the Older Americans Act. So we can tell you that we are in compliance with all of these. There are certain things we have to do sometimes, like the Title VI documentation. We actually have to fill out something to show that we're compliant with it. Other ones we show that we're compliant with it by just not violating, not having any or demerits on our record. So with that, I would recommend that we approve this. We have to speak to it. We'll put that in the tip. That is next month, like I mentioned. That would be if there's any questions about this, so I'm happy to shoot the question with us.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Pose same sign. Abstentions. Motion carried. Item 12 is report and vote on the draft fiscal year 24-27 tip. That.
Thank you. Just a quick update on the draft tip. Staff has been spending the last few months working on this and developing the projects within the tip. Thanks to all your communities for submitting those and reviewing the projects when we requested it. We have submitted the draft to the tech committee and asked them to just review it one more time, make sure that they have all the projects programmed in there correctly and accurately, the right funding sources and the right years. So that request has been made of your staffs to do that. If you advance to the next slide, the only real highlight I would make on this is that based on all the staff's reports that we received back, we were able to accommodate everybody's requests as far as where they wanted to program their projects. However, as you can see there in 2024, we only have a balance of a little over $30,000 left, which means we're not going to have any capacity to move any more projects into 2024 unless other projects were to move out of 24 and into later years like 25, 26, or 27. 25 is also pretty tight. There might be some room to accommodate a small project, but those first 2 years of the tip are going to be pretty tight as far as needing to move any future projects in there. So hopefully everybody's requests were accommodated during the development and we don't have any requests in the future, but just wanted to make a note of that so that you're aware that those first couple of years of the tip this next year are going to be pretty tight as far as fiscal capacity goes. We're going to submit this draft tip to the DOT after this meeting following approval. We'll wait and hear back from the DOT and incorporate any comments that we receive from them, as well as any additional comments we might receive from our communities. And then we'll put the final tip together, have it on approval next month before we send it on to the DOT by the July 15th deadline. Happy to take any questions you have about the draft tip.
All right. Thank you, Zach. And just for the note for the record, just there's a typo on the action item. It says 23-26, and that should be the same as the item is 24-27. Or 24-27 draft.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Second, further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. Item 13 is report on the charging and fueling infrastructure discretionary grant program. Carl.
Yes, thank you. So last couple of months, staff has been working on the charging and fueling infrastructure program that was announced in March. We had 9 MPO members sign up to be part of this grant with us. This grant focuses primarily solely on level 2 charging, which is known as destination charging, approximately 20 to 30 miles added to your vehicle per hour. So more of the shopping and entertainment, so overnight at hotels and charging, not the fast charging distances. The application is due June 13th. Overall, we asked for about $4 million. There is 20% match required by the member communities going out through with us. This is the very first year of the grant. It will run for 5 years with a total program of $2.5 million. The max award for 1 year is 15 million, so it's like now they're asking us a loan for that. Currently in the metro, we have 88 level 2 chargers. This program or ask will bring us up to 242 or an increase to 175% charging power just in the first year of the program. So with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Carl, any questions for all of us?
And just to clarify, the grant was already, because it was due a couple days ago, this would just kind of be a permanent knowledge that we did that. Yeah, but they get us on time.
It was submitted and the executive committee reviewed this. Their motion.
Second.
Motion by Hodgson, second by Gauss. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. Item 14 is report and vote on the water trail bill grant payment approval. Zach.
Thank you. Snyder submitted the partial payment application number 6 to us a few weeks ago. This was reviewed by Beck at their meeting last week. The payment application is for a total of 1.3 million, a little over 1.3 million dollars. It has been reviewed by Snyder and Polk County, and they concurred with that amount. If you advance the next slide, please. We've got a little more information to share as far as what they've been doing the last few months. They've been working on the grading on the south bank. They've been removing a lot of material from that bank, 12,000 cubic yards of material, mostly soil. They constructed a causeway out into the water a few weeks ago, and they removed an old railroad bridge footing. That's been completed. The causeway has been taken down now. And they continue to haul rock to the stockpile. So those are some of the main things that they've been working on right now. The river levels are still a little bit high. They haven't been able to get into the water as much as they would like to, but they are making a lot of progress on the bank there. As far as upcoming work, as soon as those river levels do fall, they are going to be able to get into the river and start working on the actual dam modification. They're going to start on the north side for that, and then they'll work their way over to the south side. So that gives you an idea of the work that was completed over the last month, as well as what's upcoming. As far as this payment application, if you advance the next slide, please. This one includes a little over $1.1 million in expenses that we can immediately request reimbursement for. However, the remaining $211,000 is for more stored materials, that rock that I mentioned. We cannot reimburse for the stored materials until they're actually incorporated into the project. So just want to make you aware of that. Following the approval of this payment, we will make the payment to the contractor. And then once they have cashed that check, we will be able to move forward and submit reimbursement to the Iowa DOT. I'm happy to take any questions you have about this payment.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. Item 15, report on the 2023 payment. Report, Henry.
Thank you. So payment data was collected for all paper in the MPO planning area in 2021. Currently, we're in a data collection cycle as well, so paper data is currently being collected this year. So that data collection process is led by the Iowa DOT as well as the Institute for Transportation in Iowa City. There are a bunch of vehicles that drive around the metro and cluster point data that's then converted to pavement condition index or PCI. The scores road and street segments that we utilize in our analysis. Just to note, the MPO has been tracking pavement condition metro-wide since 2013. Traditionally, we have prepared paper or static reports coinciding with our increased technology usage. We have created an online tool available on our website that allows users more access to the data. So on that tool that's available, and then link was included in our agenda packet, users are able to compare pavement data for different communities across the metro through charts on the left. We also tie back the data to our different goals, performance measures, and mobilizing tomorrow that we have. And then we also have a map where people can zoom in and look at the various data associated with each road, the street, as well as filtering by true. So bringing that data back to the performance targets that we have like tomorrow, we generally are on target to meet our 5-year target of maintaining an average PCI of 65. However, we are not on track at meeting our target for percentage of pavements for worse condition. We are above the 8% target that we set for our 5-year average. Just generally showing this data more graphically, we can see that there's a general downward trend in the overall pavement condition in our metro. Starting 2013 was our close to our highest year and trending downward. Now our PCI of 66 is considered good overall, but again, we're still trending in the wrong direction in that. And the general reason for that is because the percentage of pavements in our metro and poor worse condition are trending up, and so that is causing our average PCI to go down. But if we take the data and stratify it a little bit, we've broken out pavements by the different federal functional class. This basically represents and shows how pavers have changed their pavement preservation techniques over time. So beginning when we started tracking data in 2013, you generally see that most streets and roads are treated the same, whether it be local or principal arterial. So that's more of a worst to first fix it mentality. And over time, we've seen that change. And the change from 2019 to 2021, even though our overall PCI went down, our higher order roads, our principal arterials, our collectors, actually those average PCIs went up. That means our local communities are prioritizing those roadways over local streets, and that makes sense. These roads are generally have more traffic, they're faster traffic as well, and they serve as that connective tissue between the commercial and industrial areas. So the MPO will continue to track this data, incorporate that into our upcoming long-range transportation plan update. And we have taken questions anyone may have.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Are individual community information or PCIs available?
Yes, that is available online.
Is that on the MPO's website?
Yeah.
Should be the link on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
How often do we review that 80% goal?
Every alert campaign. So we'll review that in the years and readjust based off of this data. We actually had a higher goal before, but as you can see, we're trending quite downwards. We want to kind of set that forward to make sure we're meeting that. We do have a long range target that's closer to 80%. We feel is a good target to go towards, but we're not trying to do that.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Item 16 is report on the comprehensive safety plan RFP update. That
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to give you a quick update on the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan RFP. We did have 3 consulting firms submit responses to the RFP. FHU submitted as the lead consultant with Farr and Peers and Group Creative Services as their sub-consultants. We had a submittal from SRF with Alta Planning and Design and Snyder and Associates as their subs, and then Tool Design submitted with HR Green, Confluence, and HDR Engineering. Not a lot of submittals, but we are very happy with the quality of the 3 submittals we have. These are all really good firms with really good subs. So we're happy with that quality that we got back. If you see on the screen there, the selection committee has been put together. A list of those members is there on the screen before you. They've all been contacted. They're currently reviewing the RFPs and scoring them. And then we'll be having interviews here shortly. If you'll advance to the next slide, please. The next steps we're looking at, as I mentioned, the committee is currently looking at the RFPs and scoring them and submitting those scores back to us. The interviews have been scheduled for June 28th. We'll do all 3 of those interviews in the same day. Each of the consultants will have 30 minutes to present their proposal and then 20 minutes for question and answers. And following that, the selection committee will score the consultants based on how they did in their interviews, and we'll combine the scores together for the RFP and the interviews, and then the selection committee will come to a recommendation on a preferred consultant, which will then be brought back to the exec and policy committees for their final approval before staff would enter into any negotiations on contracts with that consultant. I would note that we are still waiting to hear back from Federal Highway. They're currently reviewing our draft grant agreement that we submitted to them. So we're waiting to hear back what kind of changes they might want us to make to that. We cannot move forward with any of the actual work until that grant agreement is finalized. But we did want to get moving on getting the consultant on board so that once that grant agreement is finalized, we can hit the ground running with that consultant and get the plan going as quickly as possible. I think that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions you have on the comprehensive safety action plan update.
Zach, any questions? Item 17, upcoming events, Connor.
The upcoming events were included in your agenda, so I don't believe them here, but I will point out the Allen County Association is coming up middle of next month. All the links will be sent out in a post-meeting email as well, so if there's anything that there's you will have to make sure your fingertips. We have to take any questions you might have.
All right, item 18, another non-action items still.
Yeah, Carl, I think I did first.
Tom Haddon and I were involved on a call this morning with a group that has a goal to plant 1 million trees in the metro area by 2030. Do I have it right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so some communities are already involved in this. It's obviously not transportation related, but I thought I'd just let you know about some proclamations that will be coming your way and encouraging your community to be involved in this. And so there are some federal funds that are available for planting trees and improving our urban canopy. So
What group is this?
It's
Crossroads, isn't it? Crossroads kind of brought this together.
Yeah,
Other utilities are on the way. I'm sorry. I know I've heard that. That's fine. Water main to be busting and they'll be spraying.
Dogs and cats live together. Are we planting elm trees?
Yeah, elm and ash.
Maybe some populars.
All right, Noel.
Yeah, I've got a couple items here. Got to go to the next slide. First of all, if you weren't aware, Alice Van Pelt is moving on to the MPO. So she's still technically employed, but she's on vacation. Weeks others time off. Just want to thank her and for all her service. She's been a great employee. Wish her well in her next endeavors. You see her around. She might not be for the MPO next time you see her. Next item is we didn't have a legislative update on here like we typically do, but there was some action related to the debt ceiling or debt limit legislation that happened earlier this time. There was a couple of elements with that relate to transportation. One of them was they rescinded unobligated COVID-19 dollars at the cross federal programs. However, that does not target the FTA's grants or any advanced appropriations from the infrastructure bill or the Inflation Reduction Act that happened for the last couple of years. They modified the NEPA environmental review process, placed limits on the time it can take to do various chemical exclusions or full environmental assessments and so forth. Those limits on the page length, so they're not just overloading documents. And then probably most impactful for us, it places discretionary limits for the next couple of years. So the discretionary funds that were in the infrastructure bills coming forward, increasing every couple of years. They're going to be reduced back down to probably FY 2022 levels. So with inflation and everything, there's actually much in those programs. So it's not going to take away those programs. They'll just probably be less funding than we anticipated. So as we learn more on that, we'll sure let you know which program. I believe it's in the discretionary funding programs that were in the infrastructure bill. So anything you have to see, grant out.
Not SDG.
No, I don't think that's. So that's one item. The next item we have for you, just to let you know that we had a phishing attempt here at the MPO. Over the last couple of days, we had attempts to access and withdraw funds from accounts that are associated with Bankers Trust, like the water trail account, as well as an account that SERPA has, or we manage that. Those attempts were not successful. We quickly got in touch with the bank and our IT and locked everything down, updated securities, the passwords, and that sort of thing. But we did want to let you know that did happen. And continue to monitor that in case there's anything else additional going on there. No pun intended. Final thing, I won't take too long on this one, but I just want to give you an update on. Some of you are familiar with this slide. I've met with a lot of you as we go through this transition period. I've been trying to meet with all board members, and I think I've got it here. I think in this room, I think Dean and Carl, I haven't met with you yet, but the three in this room, there's probably some on the way too. But just want to give you an update on this. And really, there's three phases to this. First one, just doing a lot of listening. We'll probably reconciliation that would lead to stabilization and it's back to a nice even keel, then get things ready for that transition on. If you go to the next slide, there's sorry, that's kind of hard to read, a little bit of progress on this. So in terms of board members, I've met with all 7 board members and we're working to schedule those. We talked about rebalancing the MPO's profile. A lot of this was accomplished through the work program that was approved last month, where we beefed up the transportation related elements, took out the non-transportation elements, such as watershed management, MPO contract stuff. Addressing staff turnover, like I mentioned, Allison has decided to go on, but we met with other staff and addressing any concerns that might still be lingering. Don't foresee any additional staff turnover at the moment. And then generally addressing MPO operations. And there's a few things related to that. Some of this is just simple things like, for example, understanding how the executive director's expenses should be handled. Previously, they were just kind of been signed off on by the director himself. We've discussed that, and now Ted's treasurer signs off on anything that I have. So just trying to clean things up, getting more transparent with that process. Another example, getting better communication with the IODOT. Some of that had dropped off in the last few years. So we reestablished communications there, having more regular communications with District 1 and Tony and Andy going forward. So we're all on the same page as far as activities that are happening here in the metro area. More communication with board members. Obviously, the interactions we had individually one-on-one. But the next step that will be reaching out to you to see if there's interest in having the MPO staff come to present to city council members or to city councils and boards of supervisors. That can happen now, it can happen later on after elections, whenever it makes sense for the community. We'll be responsive to that, but we want to let you know if that's there, and we'll be following up to your city managers and administrators and so forth to let that happen. Update, routine updates like this too is like part of that as well. And then finally, we kind of mentioned this before, but there's the handbook and the policies and procedures handbook. We're still working through that. But the handbook, I think there's a meeting next week that will hopefully get things wrapped up. And by the time this group meets next August, we'll have that to you for your approval. Kind of close the book on that. So just trying to get a lot of those little things taken care of. And that's the next slide there of getting to that stabilization phase. And then that'll lead on to the transition phase. So that permanent director, new director, just hit the ground running. And we've got a lot of this, leadership taken care of. With that, feel free to reach out if there's any questions, if there's anything, any additional feedback you have, anything more you want to see. If you want to be more engaged in the process, please let me know. One thing that came up through this process is the idea of having some sort of photo event, for lack of a better term, and that could be tied to our 40th anniversary. But then we come back in person a little bit more. Some of us haven't met each other before, been online and now in person. So give a chance to get to know one another, give a chance for the board to meet staff a little bit more. So that's one idea that seemed to have some support people into in the coming weeks.
You know, get my pictures of all of us 40 years ago.
Yeah. So again, it's our 40th anniversary, so it might be a nice time to do it. But we'll just let's see. So with that, again, I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I just wanted to give you that update. If you haven't heard from me yet, we'll be sure.
Thank you, Don. All right, anything else for the good of the order today? If not, just a reminder, we do not have a line policy meeting, so the next August 17th at 4 o'clock. So you have it on your calendar. Thank you, everybody.